The ability to invest in yourself is an absolute necessity. You owe it to yourself to invest your time, your talent, and your resources to elevate yourself to that point where you become a subject matter expert. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about mastering self, mastering life, and using this body of expertise to position yourself to build wealth. To join me in today's conversation, I have two dynamic personalities in studio. One, I have Clement Frank, and Clement Frank, he's an economist by profession, and he's a leader also by practice, and he is now the author of a new book titled Sound Business Leadership. Welcome, Frank.
Thank
I
you, Harry.
also have Peter Scott, and Peter Scott, he is a theologist by profession, and he is the brain behind the Legacy Chronicle Human Growth and Program, and his focus is largely based on helping people to develop their master plan for business and for life. Hi, Peter, how are you?
Doing great, Gary. Fantastic. Good to be here.
Awesome. Great to hear that. All right, today we're going to be having a pretty interesting conversation. We're going to be looking at master self, master life, and how you can use this body of knowledge to position yourself to build wealth. In starting today's conversation, I want to point out a couple of things. Any effort to master self begins with you. You owe it to yourself to recognize that you need to take your life into your hands and to make that commitment to mold it and to shape it and help it to become what it deserves to be. Now, as we talk today about master self, we talked about master life and build wealth. I want to point you in the direction of a couple of things. In your effort to master self, one of the things that I want to encourage you to focus on is on becoming a subject matter expert. Now, you can become a subject matter expert in many different ways. For example, you can learn what is the role of the SCP. The SCP is the sales communication professionals. Along with that, you can learn what is the role of an influencer. You can become a subject matter expert in these areas and so much more. Now, as you set yourself up to become a subject matter expert and you want to master yourself, you want to look at a couple of things. Is how to stress test that area of expertise that you're going after. And you often heard me talk about stress testing. So any area of expertise that you're going to be striving to become, you want to know that it makes a whole lot of sense. All right. It must make a whole lot of sense. So stress testing your area of expertise is important. Perhaps as time goes into today's program, I will talk briefly about that. So I'm going to talk a couple of things here. As you set yourself up to become a subject matter expert, you want to take the time to study your target market. Yes, you want to take the time to ensure that you understand your target market. And I will explain why as we go deeper into this program. You also want to invest the time to master your sense of self. You want to master skill sets to serve that target market. So you study the target market, and then you want to invest the time, talent, and resources to ensure that you have skill sets that is relevant to that target market. So those are two things so far. And then third, you want to position your brand in the market. So let me repeat this. Any attempt to become the subject matter expert, first you want to study your target market. You want to ensure that you have a clear mental picture of the needs, wants, and expectations of that target market. I'll talk about that as we go into today's program. Secondly, you want to ensure that you have skill sets that aligns to the needs, wants, and expectations of that target market. And then third, you want to be certain that you can take steps to position your brand in the hearts, minds, and souls of that target market. So this is the area of expertise, master and self. These are some important concepts that you want to look at. So I'm going to stop here for now, and I just want to acknowledge my team, the viewers. I can see that we have 167 persons who are here today from across the world. I want to thank you for taking the time out to support this platform, and tremendous pleasure to have you. Again, I want to thank my team who is working at the back end in terms of increasing the visibility, the reach, and the impact of these programs. Now, having said that, I will now pass control over to Frank to speak to us in the context of what are the processes to master self, master life, and build wealth. And then I'll come to Frank, so then I'll come to Peter, and then I will do further outlining showing how mastering yourself will lead to your ability to master life and then set you up to build wealth. Frank, all to you.
Thanks. It's great being here and talking about mastering self, getting wealth. It's all about developing habits, people. Um, Patrick Donohoe, he is CEO of Paradigm Life, and he says in order to master wealth, you need to master your habits. You need to develop new habits so that you don't just do the same thing over and over. But he also said that wealth is a direct result of habits. So one has got to develop new habits if they want to master wealth. Can you learn how to be wealthy? In experience, I realize that wealth is a direct result of habits. So you don't simply read a book or go to a conference. You don't just watch a YouTube video and end up being wealthy. At least that's my experience. There are some people who roll the dice and luckily hit seven. They play blackjack, lotto, everything in gambling, and they may hit the 21 numbers or how many numbers they have to. To me, that's not wealth. That's a risk. And if that's a strategy or a pattern that you want to develop, that doesn't usually end up producing good results. I believe that wealth is when principled ideas are baked into our subconscious, our nervous system. Our actions to the dynamic or the ever changing experiences of life are more automatic or unconscious. How do you get to that point when these principled ideas are baked into your system? And first, it's understanding that ideas and information must travel through three levels, particularly. The first level is the cognitive mastery, which is understanding the ideas and information rationally and how they apply to the circumstances of your life and what you want. The second level is emotional mastery, and this is where you understand that emotions are simply signaling something and they're there to serve you. They're usually to protect you. It's understanding the nature and the purpose of those emotions and then figuring out a way to get them to serve you as opposed to how most people treat the emotions where they want to suppress and not embrace. The third is the physical mastery. And physical mastery is when you don't even think about your actions or reactions or your decisions. They just a part of you. An easy example of physical mastery is sports. Whatever game you play. When you were young, there's certain things you could do. When you reach your 40s, you have another experience playing over and over um, basketball in the street to basketball is at 40. What you could have done there at a young year, your body remembers how to do certain things, how to pass and shoot. I'll give you another example. It relates to the new circumstance of your life because that's an existing circumstance of life. So if you're playing a new game, but it's still the same game. A few months ago, my wife was somewhat critical of how I was acting, and she's usually right. So I bought some challenges from work, and it was impacting how present I was for her as well as my two daughters. And she said to me, with everything you read, all these conferences and videos, all the money you're spending to improve yourself as a human being, your family, that you think you figure out a way to show up better when you come home. And what my initial response was, you can imagine, the emotional triggers were going off. In my younger days, I would have responded completely different than I did. But I understand how my response would serve me or not serve me. And they would not serve me in this circumstance. Uh, What would have happened? It would have been a rocky road if I responded the way I did or used to do in my younger days. And at that moment, I realized and sort myself, in my head, snap out of it, figure out a way to be present when my family needs me. A famous quote that I love is we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And this is usually a credit to Aristotle, a guy in the early 1900s named Will Durant, took two of Aristotle's quotes, summarized them within that quote. And there's a lesson from this experience that I was just talking about. We have an illusion that we are consciously in control of our day to day experiences. But consider for a moment the possibility that you have zero control. Your responses to the daily circumstance of life, they're automatic, they're already baked in. I don't believe in absolutes, but I want you to just consider for a moment that how you're going to show up is already baked into your body or your nervous system. And if you're happy with the results that you want in life, great. At the same time, we are wired to grow. And there's a paradox there because if you're wired to grow, it means that you need to have different results than you have
Mhm.
now. Trying to look at the same patterns and habits as before, producing new results, leads to the definition of insanity. It's not going to come from our
Mhm.
patterns and habits of the past. We want new results. We first have to understand how patterns and habits develop and then strategically design some situations and strategies to get rid or reprogram our old habits and patterns and replace them with new ones. And I believe there are a few primary variables in developing new habits, but I'll get into that when I return. Over to you, Gary.
All right, thanks for that share, Frank. Patterns and habits. And of course, today we are discussing ways to master yourself so you can master life and then position yourself to build wealth. So, thanks very much for that share. I can see that we have 215 persons who are live with us today. and from across the world. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank my team that is working eloquently behind the scene to really push this content in front of more people. I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and share so you will be the first to get these programs as we come live. And of course, today we are discussing Master Self, Master Life, and Build Wealth. When I return, I will be talking so much more about practical steps that you can take to become a subject matter expert, how you can up level that skill set in a very strategic way, and then position yourself to start building wealth. But just before I expand on that trend of thoughts, I want to turn to Peter to give us his insight on the topic of the day. Peter, all to you.
And as usual, and as Gary, I'm so much appreciative, of this platform that you are developing to impact our community and to assist individuals to gain clarity in some of the most uh, practical process that is needed for individuals to advance in business or entrepreneurship, just about any enterprise that they're seeking to advance in their lives in this time. And as we even look at mastery, self mastery, mastery of self, mastery of life, and building wealth, we tend to come from at this subject from a human growth perspective, and human growth from the perspective of um, master planning for the success that we are all looking to achieve. Within this context, uh, we look at there's three concepts that or three perspective that I want to bring to the table right now, and it is the perspective of the understanding of concepts, and producing comprehension, right? And the reason why we take that approach is because from a human growth position, we are looking at life from the perspective of what is happening in our world today. What is happening when we look at the various areas where individuals are seeking to succeed. People are seeking to succeed in business. We're seeking to succeed in our family lives. We're seeking to succeed in the area of our community, societal involvement. We're seeking to succeed in the religious components of our lives, those who practice religion. So there are all these structures where life is concerned. People are seeking academic success, but what we have found over the past couple of years is that all these structures that we are seeking to succeed within these structures, there has been a great deal of change, of redefinitions. So what used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the what used to be um, what individuals could depend on as for guidance in life, the meaning of those elements has so much changed that there is largely a lot of confusion in societies. When you look at what is happening in politics, individuals and the divisions that are happening in these areas. Now we have to begin to try to look at, as I said, now context. We have to now look at the context. We have to look at the concepts in order to produce comprehension. All right, so let me talk about now just the context. And the context, the reason why we want to bring out this in terms of what context. It's, and as we do know that the context is the framework or the backdrop against which we're going to measure self mastery and life mastery and build wealth. What is the context that we're going to use to do that? And the reason why we're saying this as well, it is because well, Stephen Covey, one of my favorite authors, Stephen said that if you are seeking to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder, if it is not leaning on the right wall, every step that somebody take will be the step in the wrong direction. All right. So context is important. The context for self mastery, the context for life mastery, the context for building wealth, it has to be framed properly. If not, we will get to the end of our lives only to find out that we have been deceived because we have been given information, or we have been fed information that now that we are a certain degree in our journey, we're realizing that it is not serving us in the way that we once thought. So we, human growth now have to come in to say, in what context are we seeking for self-mastery? In what context are we seeking to master life? In what context are we seeking to build wealth and to achieve? And the measurement now by which we're going to um, define these concepts is, what is the outcome after 6,000 years? And sometimes I feel like the party pooper. I feel like the party pooper when I bring these, when I speak like this, because when we look at life overall, where humanity is concerned, I have to begin to wonder, how advanced is the human species, and if we can continue without stepping back to look at really happening at large. If we do not do that, can we continue on the same trajectory? And I say this within this framework again. I say this within this framework. At when I in my earlier years, I love art. I love art, and there are some times when I would be so fascinated by a particular area on the canvas that I would be there painting, and I'm bringing out this beautiful area on the canvas, and my mentor would touch me on the back and say, Peter, step back now, because you are building this beautiful area on one place of the canvas, but it is not being developed in relation to the artwork, the broader spectrum of the artwork. So every now and again, it's important to step back and to ensure that all areas is being developed at the same time, so it can become this beautiful kaleidoscope of colors and beauty. So it is within that where we speak about the context when we're talking about self concept, self mastery. Within what context? When we're talking about mastering life, within what context? When we're talking about building wealth, within what context? And the context that we want to present to individual, it has to be in the context of human growth. The reason why we want to achieve wealth, it has to be for the whole sum of humanity, because when we look at what is happening on the global landscape, um, you know, we don't want, there are too much odds against humanity for me to think that I can just build my business and I'm safe, for me to just focus on my little area and the global platform in which we live now. If I violate the atmosphere in my little area, it is being blown by the wind. If I achieve success in my little area at the expense of the rest, then I cannot say that I have achieved success, because the large part of the of what I've caused leaving will come back in the long run to test the real substance of my success in my little area. So context is important. We have to evaluate context, and then we have to look at concepts. And when we talk about concepts, now we're talking about meaning. What do you mean by that? Okay, you talk about self. What do you mean by self? You talk about mastery. What does mastery mean? And when we're looking at it this way, we're just typically saying that I do not have the right to just produce my own definition, which sometimes does not take into consideration the definition that life gives. And what we're finding, what we have found in the current world that we're living in, based upon maybe politics, maybe because somebody wants to advance their political career, they redefine definitions or redefine elements that has been long standing for years. We know that this particular definition means this, but now we have changed that definition, and we find a lot of that has been happening over the past few years. So there is and as there's I like the scripture, and there's a scripture that says that there came a time in ancient Israel when every man did what was right in his own eyes. And when you have a platform where everybody is doing what seems right in their own eyes, what you have in that is chaos and anarchy. So how do we bring concepts for individuals to agree, not just in terms of what I feel, but what life, the definition that life gives? How does life itself define these concepts? And so in understanding that, we now get to the area of producing comprehension, where we now comprehend. So we are all on the same page. So when we talk about mastering life, we're on the same page. We can agree. And it is not just me trying to be masterful, or me being applying some marketing clause or marketing skill to make something effective. No, but we're breaking it down to what did life say this means? And we can all come to the agreement that life produces this definition, and without that definition is what we're going into now. The final piece of my introduction here is the establishment of laws. The establishment of laws. And the establishment of laws is, simply put, is a system and principle by which the various structures of life is defined. So I'm only here for maybe if I live to the greatest maximum of my life, if I make it to 100 and say 20 years, perhaps, it's still a short time in response to what life is. So as I say again, I do not have the authority within my short period of life to define what life is, or to define what life, the structures and the principles of life is. I have to come and approach life from the understanding that life presents its own definitions. And it is my responsibility to study life to understand what the rules and the principles of life is. And it is in hence when we understand success now, what is true success? True success is based upon the obedience to laws. I'm going to stop it right here. True success, true mastery of self, true mastery of life, true wealth is when I understand what the principles of life of and laws of life is, and then I obey those laws. Then clearly, then we can, at the end of the day, I can be satisfied that I'm truly successful and I've truly mastered life and self. I'll come back with a little bit more later.
Um, all right, Peter, you've said a lot. One thing that I want to touch on is a point you have made earlier, and I do believe as you identify your career path, an area that you want to master, an area that you want to become a subject matter expert in, you want to be certain that that has been stress tested. All right. What I'm going to do very quickly is to give a brief overview of what stress testing your career path represents. First of all, you want to be certain that what you're doing is relevant to people. And there's a particular way in which you could set yourself up to predetermine if what you're preparing to learn is relevant to people. You also want to be certain that your service is going to be viable. It's going to be viable to you, it's going to be viable to the beneficiaries. You want to be certain that you're able now to access your ideal client with your value offer, because very often you have a skill set, but then you're not able to reach the ideal client with your output. That's a challenge. So in stress testing, these are all the things that you're looking for. You also want to stress test. Some of the other things that you want to look at is to ensure that your value offer is going to be reaching an urgent and immediate need. If it is not reaching an urgent and immediate need, there lies a challenge. So these are important concepts that you want to look at. And last but not least, on that particular point of stress testing, you want to be certain also that the ideal client also have the ability, all right, and the willingness to pay for your value offer. So as you set yourself up to identify an area where you want to become a subject matter expert in, doing that stress test beforehand is vital. So as promised, I want to do a further deep dive into mastering self, mastering life, and moving all the way over to building wealth. In starting today's program, I clearly established that any attempt to master self should entail you focusing on how to become a subject matter expert. Now, of course, there are a number of ways in which you can become that subject matter expert. But in this effort also, there's several things that I want to recommend. As you set yourself up to become that subject matter expert, one, you want to spend as much time as possible to understand people, because your subject matter expertise must be relevant, must be aligned to people. And for that alignment to take place, it means that you must understand people. And there are a number of ways in which you're going to go about trying to understand people. First of all, we talk about the importance of collecting sensitive information about your ideal client. Then we talk about analyzing that information, leveraging that information, and mitigating that information in a market sensitive manner. So, with this approach, you have a clear understanding of who are the consumers. It is with this knowledge You can now go another step further, and that is to ensure that you are innovating products and services. You're building up your skill sets in alignment with market demands. You see, very often what we see is that persons develop skill sets, but then that skill set again is not stress test against market needs. So because your skill set is not stress test against market needs, you struggle to position your brand in the market in a way that makes sense to you and everyone else. So the recommendation that is being tabled right now will prevent that from happening, and it will set you up for success. So once you understand people, their needs, wants, and expectations, this is what you're now using as your springboard to innovate products and services. All right. To the next step now, once you understand people, you're now innovating products and services. You now can position those products and services in front of people. But just before I come to positioning, I want to talk a little bit more about mastering skills to serve your target market. You see, as you get into the market and you study the ideal client can be rising stars in business. And to study the ideal client, it means that you are studying what are their needs, their wants, and their expectations. And as we begin to do that deep dive into the needs, wants, and expectations of businesses, there's a couple of things that stands out. One, we see that every business they need access to market. It is through access to market that they're able to grow and to scale their businesses. Do you have this kind of expertise that can help businesses to access markets? It is your ability to do this that is going to help you to be relevant to that ideal client. So as you set yourself up to master skills, you're asking yourself, what are the needs of the ideal client? Access to market may be one of them. What are other needs that businesses may need? They may need access to people. You know, to start and grow and scale a business, you need the right resources, the right human resources to function at the strategic, tactical, and operational level. And you have to ask yourself, now that you have seen businesses have demand for critical human resources to help move their vision forward, the big question that you want to ask yourself now, you position yourself to be a subject matter expert, is do you have the expertise to help businesses to address the human resource needs that they vitally need to move their businesses forward? So again, as you do become that subject matter expert, one of the reasons you're digging deep into studying your target market is to understand their needs. And then you're building skill sets in alignment with those needs so you can better supply the ideal client. That's what's going to set you up to win. Again, as you master skill sets to better serve the ideal client, what are some other needs that the ideal client may want? Every business from research, we're seeing that they need capital. Do you have this expertise? Are you a subject matter expert when it comes to capital markets and capital market access? Perhaps now, if because you have done the research and you're seeing that millions of businesses go on the large because they're never able to reach that financial target, reach the financial objective or reach the cost of doing business because there's a cost of doing business, and because they're unable to raise the capital to cover the cost of doing business, the business goes on. Perhaps you are the subject matter expert that can help businesses to overcome the access to capital issue. As you set yourself up to be a subject matter expert, as you set yourself up, is one way to master yourself. All right. The last concept that I'm going to be looking at now is brand positioning. So we talked early on about becoming a subject matter expert. And one of the things that we said is that you need to understand your target market as a subject matter expert. And you need to ensure that you have skill sets that are relevant to the ideal client. So now that you have conquered these two things, the third step that you want to do is to position your brand in the market because you're now a subject matter expert. But how do you position that brand in the market? There are a number of ways in which you can position yourself as a subject matter expert in the market. The concept visibility, I would often say, should bring multiple thoughts to your mind from the time you hear visibility. When we hear visibility, we are talking about four main things. How well are you using mass media to position your brand in the market? How well are you using social media to position your brand in the market? How well are you using the metaverse to position your brand in the market? And how well are you using independent communication channels to position your brand in the market? From the time you hear positioning, visibility should come to mind. And when you hear visibility, these four other concepts must come to mind. Now, in the absence of this, the possibility exists that your effort to position your brand is going to be compromised. So these are some deep subject matter that we can get into. And today I'm doing a high level overview to really help you to understand as you become that subject matter expert, three important concepts that you need to consider. Now, I'm just going to go a little bit more into brand positioning on the context of visibility. It's important that you take the time to understand mass media. And by mass media, I'm talking about radio, television, and newspaper. Any effort to optimize brand positioning, some consideration must be given to these platforms. All right. You need to understand the effectiveness of mass media, the effective use of mass media. You need to know that it makes sense. The same principle applies to social media. You're, the falsified notion that the average person have is that by getting on social media is going to set you up for instant visibility and instant success. That's far from the truth. Perhaps 2% of the social media users may experience that but for the vast majority of persons who are using social media, they must understand how to navigate this platform. And there's a whole lot for us to get into. But as you set yourself up to be that subject matter expert that can add value and fix problems, that you set yourself up to position your brand in the market, this is not wishful thinking. This is not speculation. This is not imagination. If you are not a subject matter expert in brand positioning, it makes a whole lot of sense to connect with experts, to connect with mentors and coaches and sponsors and a supportive community that can help you navigate this. Because the reality is that you can have an excellent brand, but you're not visible because you are not the expert when it comes to brand positioning. So you struggle in this process for decades, as I would normally say. So understanding this ecosystem is vital. Now that you understand this ecosystem and you set up, your processes and your systems, this is what you can now use as your springboard to position yourself to build wealth. And let me just quickly recap this. So first of all, you invest time, talent, and resources to master who you are, and you become a subject matter expert. And you package your expertise and you make it purpose. As purpose, you now build it out in such a way to add value and to fix problems. And there's where you're now being able to impact not only your life, but you're able to impact other people's lives. All right. As you take step to position that brand in the market, to be visible, to make reach and impact, to client conversion, to cash flow optimize, to build confidence, trust, and credibility, you're helping in a way to add value to life and to your life also. The process to optimize this entire process is where the wealth building concept comes in. All right, here is where the wealth building concept comes in. Because once you have mastered your craft and you have built proper processes and you have systemized those processes in the right way, it can set you up to build wealth. Well, I will talk about exclusively when I return that wealth building journey and how you can take, the first step, master self, how you can take the second step, master life, package this, and position yourself to start building wealth by this body of knowledge. So, with that, I now want to turn. I can see Frank is not here at the moment, but I'm going to ask Peter to chime in a little bit here on the topic of discussion today before we move to Frank. And then we start to wrap up today's program. Peter, to you.
Okay, all right. So when we're thinking about the mastery of self and the mastery of life and wealth, the question from a human growth standpoint again, you know, is why. We like to ask the why question because again we're looking for success, right? Where every human being or quest is for success, and the quest that we are seeking to achieve can be established, or it can be defined, or it can individuals can get some sense of direction and understanding when they ask the why question. And the question of why will always bring us to purpose, because if any for any individual to be highly successful, it's when you understand, when we all understand purpose, um, that gives us the vision. It gives us the elements that we are going to need to thrive. Going into business, going into entrepreneurship, there are certain challenges that individuals will face. And if they have not answered the question of why, then when those challenges start, then the pressure might cause individuals to feel they want to give up. And this is one of the programs why this pro why what one of the reason why this program is here is to assist, to enable or to assist individuals to get all the necessary factors in place to increase their chances of success. And this is the reason why I'm saying to establish success is understanding purpose. And when you understand your purpose, you definitely will have that to drive to overcome whatever challenges that you find. And the purpose for any endeavor, it's to serve humanity. It is to for human growth. Businesses are in place to serve or to add to human growth and development. But what we also find is that there are elements that we see in our society that seem not to be established for those reasons. And this is a reason why we have to examine, why we look at, why I make the present the context that I bring a while ago. All right, but there are seven areas of community development and advancement, starting with self. So individuals, we start with ourself, the development of ourself, the mastering of ourselves, and that extends out to having family and the other structures within which we will grow and develop is that we require an education. That's one of the structures that is established to bring us the right information. Then we have government structures that regulates the relationship between the various elements that operates within the society. And as I mentioned, then businesses are established for the transaction between all individuals as we are interacting with each other within the society. Then we have media by which we information is dispersed across the community. And the last structure within the societal um, placement is religion or spirituality. So let me just run that over again. It starts with you, it starts with the individual, and it goes into the structure of family. We need to educate ourselves. We need to have rules that governs our relationship as we are sharing common space, which gives rise to government. As we produce goods and services, it gives rise to businesses. As information is dispersed, it gives rise to media. So within these structures is where we will ask, we have access to how we relate to each other within our society. So the question is, as I'm saying, the backdrop of human growth is understanding the why. And all of these structures are supported, are designed, are must be structured for the upliftment of human society, the betterment of humans, the growth of humanity. And all of these structures for them to work cohesively requires a dynamism of what the last point I mentioned, laws. When we understand the rules and the principles by which these structures are designed, and we adhere to those structures and those principles, and we measure our why based upon those structures and those principles, that is how we will graduate from one level of mastery to the next. That is how we graduate or we uplift or we arise from one dimension of being a master to the next dimension. And it is within those contexts when we are working in cohesive. And when I say laws, let me define this, that when I say laws, laws are different from human rules. Human rules are designed to keep particular amounts of order, but if I break a human rule, I can get away with it if nobody sees me. But when there are laws, I cannot get away with laws without the law itself come into bearing to bring me into accountability. So a law that we're saying, there are laws that governs, as I say, self. There are laws that governs a family. There are laws that governs our education. There are laws that governs society in terms of the structures of government. There are laws that governs business. There are laws that governs the way how the exchange of information ought to go into our community. The violation of any of these is what we see in the large space of what we are endure in life, in our community, that we see on our screens. And my position is this: to bring awareness for us to understand that our success, when we begin to thrive, and how we begin to thrive, is just to discover what these laws are. And by adhering to these laws, that is how we achieve the mastery and the success that we're looking for, as we go and as we share the space, this grand space that we call life.
All right, thanks for that share and your closing thoughts, Peter. I will now come to Frank for your thoughts and your closing remarks on today's discussion. All to you, Frank. You're mute.
Sorry about that. All
It's
right. Wealth is a direct result of habits. I repeat that wealth is a direct result of habit. And as I said before, with a famous quote, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And the last time I stopped off, I was talking about the variables in developing new habits. And the number one is the counterintuitive to how society operates. Because we're used to information at our disposal immediately. We are used to instant food, instant entertainment. Everything is instant. We live in a microwave society. And I believe that patterns and habits are the opposite because it takes a while, especially as we get older. Replacing the existing patterns and habits with new ones, we have to understand some psychology. We have to understand that it takes a bit of time to develop those habits, but they're worth it. So here are a couple of variables. And the first variable is designing the pattern or the habit or actions. We want to design them after what's proven to work. There's a lot of examples of the different patterns as it relates to wealth and finance at work. And the second is designing a strategy that um, either forces us to do it or a strategy that allows repetition over and over again to build into our nervous system these habits. A great example that I love to use is CrossFit. It's a different workout every single day. It's hard. Don't have to think about that. The pattern that I developed was getting up at a certain hour and showing up every single day. And that's a strategic design to get a good workout every single day. The final variable is establishing stakes where you recognize that if you don't change or grow, what's going to happen? And that's a negative state, but you also start to identify the positives. What you're going to gain, what your experience of life is going to be like if you develop these habits. And one of the things that we need to talk about is that you are what you repeatedly do. So as you continue to listen to us, one of the things that we are going to stress is that the habits that you have can serve people. Habits can produce millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions for people. If you're looking from a production standpoint, how you make money, and then also investing habits, saving habits, spending habits, these are ways in which you can develop the habits and patterns that will ultimately serve you. And in the future, we need to make sure that we check back. And so in our checking back, we realize where we are, how far we come, and where we're going. So keep listening to us. There's so much more that we can share. Thank you, Gary.
All right, thanks for that share, Frank. I'm going to conclude by doing a couple of things. One is to add to your talking points, which is habits, and also integrate that into my last talking point of today, which is build wealth. I did promise to talk to you about the process to build wealth. Well, let me say this: habit has to be learned. Very often, what you have as a habit is not serving you your best interest. So you may have to talk with people like Frank. You may have to talk with other subject matter leaders that can really help you to learn, apply, and master the right habits. So habits has to be learned first of all. Habit has to be applied, and habit has to be mastered. And habits in the context of wealth creation, it is not automatic. The average person is not going to wake up today and know all the right habits and to build wealth. So this is something that has to be learned. This is something that has to be applied after you learn it. And this is something that you have to master over a period of time. But let me bring everything together here. In starting this discussion, I emphasize the importance of you becoming a subject matter expert. Why is that so important in the wealth building equation? Because once you now becomes a subject matter expert, it is much easier for you to package that talent and position that talent as a minimum viable offer or a most viable offer to the ideal client. You can package that. But in packaging your talent, there are several things that you want to do is to see that talent in terms of multiple income streams. So you are an influencer. The question you must be asking yourself, can you leverage your skill set as an influencer to generate multiple streams of income? If not, why not? This is where the wealth building process comes in. Perhaps you might be a sales communication professional. The big question you want to be asking yourself, can I package my talent as a sales communication professional to generate multiple streams of income? If not, why not? Perhaps you may not be the expert that knows exactly how to package your talent in such a way to generate multiple streams of income. So in this case, you need to start talking to a subject matter expert that can help you do that. Now, one of the things that we have done, we have built out the GIP initiative, which is the Global Influencers Partners Program. And what the Global Influencers Partners Program will help you to do is to understand exactly how to do exactly what I'm talking about. The GIP initiative will help you to understand what are the fastest ways to cash flow your business. And perhaps it's going to help you to understand how to monetize your platform on social media. Because when you know what you're about, you can monetize your influencer brand on social media. Or let me break it down this way. So you are a subject matter expert. How do you package this? You can build out lecture content. So you are going to different universities and perhaps you're doing a guest lecture. That provides another stream of income. Perhaps you're doing an article daily or weekly for a popular publishing house. That generates another source of income. Perhaps you're digitizing your content and it is now available across social media platforms. So interested persons are able to go to your content and listen to your content and learn and perhaps pay a small fee for the information that you're going to be sharing. That's another source of income. Perhaps as a subject matter expert, you can now think about writing your book and you can now make your book available to perhaps a few thousand, a few hundreds of thousands, or perhaps a few millions of persons. That's another source of income. So the process of building a wealth, these are habits that you need to learn. These are habits that you need to apply, and these are habits that you need to master. Now, I know that I gave you a blueprint in terms of how you can take your subject matter expertise and mold it into multiple streams of income. yes, it may not be the easiest thing for the average person to do because it requires a certain degree of knowledge, a certain degree of skill sets to be able to do it. If you don't have the expertise to do this, here is where working with a mentor, a coach, your sponsor, a supportive community is really going to set you up for success. So, these are some food for thoughts that I want to leave with you today. So, in conclusion, I want to emphasize this. You owe it to yourself to invest your time, talent, and resources to master who you are. All right. Master who you are. You owe it to you. All right. You need to make this type of investment in you. And as you master who you are, you can better master life because you become a greater value to yourself, a greater asset to yourself, and a greater asset to those around you. You're better able to master life. And as you're now able to master life, you can now create scenarios, create the environment where your wealth building journey can begin. The wealth building journey, of course, is more expansive because I can talk today about what is stocks and bonds and mutual funds and what is hedge funds and what is ETF. I can go into all of this because the wealth building journey is very expansive. But I've shown you a lot of possibilities that once you master self, you master life, and how you can easily position yourself now to start your wealth building journey. So I trust that you would have enjoyed today. I can see that we have with us present 200 plus persons. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And I really trust that you had a lot of nuggets in today's presentation of Master Self, Master Life, and Build Wealth. Now, I want to give Frank the last word and as us to talk a bit about his new book. I know that he has his book that is going to be out soon, Sound Business Leadership. Frank, can I have you to close the program out by talking to us about that book?
Mm. Sound, sound business leadership, not
Sound,
just sound
sound.
leadership, but very sound. I was
I hear you.
intentional. I was intentional when I was doing the song business leadership, um, because the thing about it, you have a lot of leaders. You have a lot of persons who call themselves leader, but are they sound? And so, some business leadership is for every leader. It's for those who are in the church, those who are in politics. You have your own entity. Um, and there are a lot of benefits to that. Benefits to politicians in how you can garner support by showing empathy to your support base. One of the things that we realize is that when politicians get into positions, though they are there to serve, they sometimes go in there wanting to be served. And so this book shifts that focus from a selfish way in which you become more empathetic to your support base. And so for those who are pastors, they're sometimes when it's good to shed the weight to pass on some responsibility to others so that you don't suffer burnout. So the book speaks to that. And so for those who are interested and just make contact with us and we can make sure that you get a copy when it publishes later.
All right, thanks for that share, Frank. And there you had it. Very soon, this book is going to be released, and do make contact with us, send us a DM, and I would be so happy to put you in contact with Frank and ensure that you get a copy of that book. So, with that being said, I want to thank my team for being here today. It has been such a pleasure working with you. We had a very dynamic conversation on Master Self, Master Life, and Build Wealth. We will do this again tomorrow, Saturday at 3 p.m. EST. And join us as we do a further deep dive into leadership processes and systems. If you want to be successful in business and in life, you need to understand the leadership habits. You need to understand processes and you need to understand also how to systemize your processes. So we will do a deep dive into that conversation tomorrow. So I do encourage you to join us tomorrow as we examine leadership, processes, and systems. Again, I want to thank over 200 persons who have joined us today. And I truly enjoy having you with us today, and I truly trust that you would have benefited a lot from today's program. I want to thank my extensive team who are working in the back end of this program to really position the content across the world. I truly thank you and want to wish you a great day and a great weekend ahead of you. Peter and Frank, we will talk soon.
All right.